Hello guys, welcome to the Thursday direction video. Finishing up our mini plague slash kind of finishing up the end of the Middle Ages. Yesterday we read about Joan of Arc, the 100 Years' War, a little bit more about the plague. And today we're doing our notes on it. And then tomorrow's Friday. So we're at the end of the week here. We're doing good. So let's kind of just wrap it up here with some good notes. So our learning goal today, be able to just describe the Black Plague and how it affected Europe. If you could do those two things, you've accomplished what's needed to be done in a high school world history class. Can you explain it? And can you describe how it affected Europe now, or then, and maybe how it affects it now? So the vocab, just the bubonic plague, just one today, so the shortest vocab we've had. It all kind of starts with the famine of 1315 through 1317, as you can see here. By 1300, Europeans were farming almost all the land they could cultivate. A population crisis developed. A climate change in Europe produced 3 years of crop failures between the years of 1315 and 1317. That's how it gets its name. As many as 15% of the peasants in some English villages died. One consequence of starvation and poverty was your body is now being susceptible to disease. Bad diet equals bad health. As simple as that. And we talked about the peasant class and their diet before, how it wasn't good. Now you kind of throw in this deal. And it's kind of a perfect storm. It's a good recipe for something bad happening. Now, when we're looking at the plague, there's like three main culprits here. You have the disease itself, okay, which is inside of these fleas, okay? So the disease is in the blood of the fleas, and then the fleas obviously are on the rats, and they're biting the rats, which means this blood here gets regurgitated and it goes into the rat, and now the rat is affected. So when they say we read the videos and the readings too, they said that it actually spreads along rats. That's true, but it's all about the fleas that are on the rat and obviously the plague that is inside the flea. So it's a little bit more complicated than just they're on the rats. It's kind of a trickle-down effect. So the origins of the plague, we already know this. The disease arrives in Europe from the steppes of China, aka Central Asia, depending on the source. We believe that far western Chinese Empire is most likely where it all began, and then as we know, it spreads through trade routes. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see the picture. So again, it spreads through trade routes. We even saw how it spreads on sea trade routes, right? We saw with the Italians, that's how it shows up to them. Basically, this like ghost ship shows up, and all the people on board are dead or dying, and it's because the plague got them. All right, so in 1347, it has already spread to Constantinople. The symptoms of bubonic plague, you get these things called a bulbous, right, which is that giant sore that you may get. A lot of times it'll be like on your neck or on your groin, but other people have them eventually just all over their body. And then this one right here is symptomatic form. I don't know if you guys can see this because I think I'm in the way, but it's just a hand that kind of looks like it has frostbite on it. And if you get this kind of one, because it makes your hands all black and your toes all black, hence the Black Death, this one was an almost 100% mortality rate. So you'd rather have the giant lumps compared to like the frostbite look. A little more deadly. All right. Oh, and I think one thing we didn't realize is that the bubonic plague is like still around. It's just not wiping out 50% of the population. But there are still victims, and the bubonic plague still lingers in some of the, we'll say, like lesser traveled areas and more remote areas of Europe and Asia. We'll skip ahead to this one. One thing doctors tried to do to try to, I guess, save you is they would lance your bubo. They would lance, or basically by lancing, I just mean they're cutting open that giant bump. So, for example, they would try to cut this. They thought that these, whatever was inside of these things, was causing it. So they're trying to cut them off, and obviously, these aren't like soft tissue. It's like scar. And so imagine like trying to get into a callus or something like that. So, very painful, obviously, very discomforting. And pretty gross. Here's the disease cycle. Here's how it goes. So fleas drink the rat blood that carries the bacteria. The bacteria multiply in flea's gut. Fleas get clogged with bacteria. Flea bites human and regurgitates blood into human wound. Now the human is infected, and you just rinse and repeat that cycle until everybody in Europe gets infected. The art in the medieval ages, because of the plague, we start to get this obsession with death, and I think our video showed it too. Yeah, so a lot of the art in the late Middle Ages is pretty dark. You know, it's a lot of it. It's a mix between dark and spiritual. So you'll see a lot of like ghouls and goblins, and you'll see a lot of like, I don't know, religious figures. So we have that. So we'll kind of take a look at some of these here. So here's the Bring Out Your Dead from before, medieval art, and the plague. So you have all the skulls and stuff, and the thing here to know is even the people that are working are skeletons too. And the question is why? It's just a matter of time before they get it. So they're the walking dead. It's just a matter of time before you get sick and you die. So it's really dark and depressing and pretty, you know, eye-opening art. And again, it's just that obsession with death in the late Middle Ages when it comes to their art. Here, because the plague, it can hit you fast, okay? And this one does a good job of explaining that. The victims ate lunch with their friends and dinner with their ancestors. Just showing how fast you can get sick and die. You could be fine for breakfast or lunch in this case, and then by the time that night, you could be dead. Like, it just happened so fast. So you never really knew when it was your time, because you could wake up feeling great, and 12 hours later you could be dead that fast. So for a lot of people, that was kind of a scary part. It could happen and it could progress so quickly. Attempts to stop the plague. We had the leeching, where they thought it was in your blood, so they would just kind of cut you a little bit, and then you would basically drain some blood out, like donate blood, but you just drip it out, and it was called leeching. They do the same thing with leeches too. They just basically put leeches on you. You had the doctor's robe. You may have seen this before. I actually saw a guy at Walmart wearing this with his mask on for the coronavirus. I thought it was a little overboard, but I also thought it was kind of funny. So, yeah. You'd have the classic doctor's robe that we now associate with, you know, nowadays it's like you see this with like horror movies or death, because we still associate this look with the plague. We talked about the flagellants, people who they were trying to show God that we're going to pay for everyone's sins. So they would, like, you know, they showed them whipping themselves in the back, right? Basically flogging themselves to try to basically pay for the sins of everybody in Europe to hopefully end the plague. And they talked about how they were like rock stars. Everyone was like, you know, it was a weird deal back then where people actually, you know, they respected these people for doing this, and they thought they were actually helping. And our videos talks about how, you know, these people, they would do this all day, and then at night they would just party it up with each other. So kind of an interesting deal, yeah. But they would just walk through towns, basically whipping each other, trying to pay for the sins of Europe. Just like a lot of times in history, the Jews get blamed for things that they probably shouldn't, obviously. And so this is another case of that, one of the earlier ones. And so this is just another example. People thought like the Jews, because they weren't Christian, that they were causing this. Sorry, got distracted there. But we're back. And, yep, just let you know that, like, they're just blaming everybody. And the Jews, since they were not Christian, God was smiting all of Europe because of this one separate group right here. So you start to see some Holocaust type, we'll say some stuff that resembles that era, right? So you'll have the Jews wearing these different badges, kind of marking them as Jews, very similar to what we'll see later down the road. And that's what happens. History repeats itself. Death triumph, basically death being superior to people, so we see that a lot. I'm going to skip the Maccabi Ditty, just kind of splitting. And then how does the plague spread? Trade, 100% trade. Through the trade routes, Silk roads on the water routes that are for trading. It's very obvious, and we can see it as historians, how it's it's 100% trade. Nothing else that you can see there. On the mortality rate, 35 to 70%, according to all historians. Your best bet is just to pick somewhere in the middle. So, like, a lot of people think it's between 35 and 50%, and 25 million people dead. And, you know, it's fast. Imagine right now if we lost 70% of the population of the world. Like, it's wild. It's mind-boggling to think about. And that's literally what happened. Okay? Exit ticket. Now, it's funny, when I made this exit ticket, the disease that we were thinking of was Ebola. And now it's so funny how, you know, history does repeat itself. Here we are again. Except now I'm guessing, you know, the number one disease that's on everyone's mind is the coronavirus. But yeah, when I made this exit ticket a few years ago, it was the Ebola crisis. So it's just kind of funny how that happens. And before that, it was the mad cow disease. So every time we do this, it's kind of interesting. So for this one, you kind of just reflect on yourself here. I don't need you to turn it in or anything. Just kind of think about it and self-reflect on that one. But that's all I got, guys. Oops, wrong way. That's all I got, guys. And I'll end you here with this last kind of reflection question, and then I'm out of here. So have a good day. Tomorrow's Friday. We may or may not have an assignment. I'm still debating. A lot of people have been working really hard this week. It's been awesome to see. So I'll think about it the rest of the day, and I'll let you guys know tomorrow morning. Okay, bye-bye.